Before we talk about the biggest mistake that students make with main idea questions and primary purpose questions, why don't you go ahead, read this passage, try the question on your own, and then we're going to talk about it. So go ahead, pause the video, and then we'll work through this problem. So you've read the passage, you've tried the question. Let's talk about this type of question and the big mistake that many students make with questions like primary purpose or main idea or any general question like that. So in this question, we want to know the primary purpose of the passage, and we've got 4 choices. All of them begin with verbs because with questions like these, purpose questions in particular, what we're really asking is, what is the passage doing? Right? What is the function of the passage overall? So go through the choices. Of course, we would read this through first, and let's see what we have for each choice. So A, reveal how technology has revolutionized business practices. The issue with this choice, even though there's parts of it that are okay because the passage is about how the internet allows for the sharing of content, and that sharing of content to many people can increase publicity for whatever business you're doing. So, that is a new idea. It's a new practice. The issue is that with this word revolutionized. Revolutionize is way too extreme. And generally speaking, we want to avoid extreme answer choices because they're just too strong. Sure, this stuff has changed business, but to say it's revolutionized it, we would need more evidence from the passage to say that. How about B, show how different types of businesses benefit from sharing content. So this is the trap choice, and we'll come back to this one. If you put B, then you fell for the trap. Let's come back to that. C, advocate for a way to distribute content. So this is a pretty general, boring kind of choice, but that's actually the value of it. This is our right answer because the passage is indeed advocating or arguing for a way to distribute content. In other words, to do so free over the internet because the benefits of publicity are many. So C works even though at first perhaps it seems kind of blah and kind of overly general. That's actually a virtue. With D, suggest ways to increase profits on content. Just the opposite. The passage is not talking about how you can make money on content, but actually how you can spread it for free and get benefits other ways. So why is the answer C over B? What's going on with B? B, if you put B, most likely you focused on this last paragraph. This last paragraph gives us some examples of a social media strategist, a clothing retailer, two examples, I guess, maybe more elsewhere, but these are the main 2 of social media strategists and clothing retailer using this strategy. So you might say, oh, look, that does show how different types of businesses benefit from sharing content. Well, yes and no, because sure, it is in the last paragraph, but it's not in the passage as a whole. And this is the big flaw. This is the big trap. Don't get drawn in to choices that are mentioned in the passage, more or less in passing or in a piece of a paragraph, if that's not what the whole passage is about, right? Sure, they mention B kind of in this last paragraph, but it's not what the passage as a whole is concerned with. B, or choice C, is more general. It's more capturing as much of the passage in the answer as you can. So the trap to avoid is don't get sucked into choices that are mentioned in a sentence or in a few sentences in the passage, but which aren't the main focus of the passage overall. Go instead with more general choices like choice C, which may seem broad and overly broad and kind of bleh, but that's actually their virtue because they capture more of the passage overall. So to sum up, in main idea and primary purpose questions, make sure that your answer encapsulates as much of the passage as possible. You're not going to be able to summarize the whole thing necessarily. There might be some pieces left out, but you want the choice that captures the passage as a whole, not just a piece here or there. And therefore, you want to avoid answers that target specific or minor pieces of the passage only. Even if they mention something that's mentioned in the passage, if it's not general, if it's not about the passage as a whole, it can't be the answer. And then finally, typically, the more general and unremarkable the choice, the better. Now, it's not always to say you pick the most general choice, but typically, general choices, especially on the SAT, tend to be better than more specific choices, obviously, especially when you're dealing with general questions. So that's the big trap to avoid. Make sure you don't get sucked into certain details that may seem to be relevant. You want the choice that best captures as much of the passage as a whole as you can. To learn more about Reason Prep's SAT, SAT subject test, and ACT video courses, go to reasonprep.com/enroll, and you can find the link in the description below the video.